Welcome to the Golden Seams podcast. I'm Gabe, and along with my co-host Michae, we're thrilled to have you join us on this transformative journey of self-discovery and personal growth. Our podcast is all about helping you uncover your authentic self, find your true calling, and create prosperity in alignment with your deepest values and aspirations.
As you know, we're diving deep into the theme of boundaries, a crucial aspect of living authentically and pursuing your true path. We're exploring Melissa Urban's insightful book, The Book of Boundaries, Set the Limits That Will Set You Free. Melissa has helped countless individuals reclaim their time, energy, and well-being. Today we're talking about Chapter 8, Clearing the Table, Setting Boundaries Around Food, Alcohol, and Table Talk. Born from more than a dozen years of helping people identify and create their own personalized, sustainable diets, often the people closest to you are the most likely to disrespect your boundaries around food and drink. While these situations are not specific to any one food or drink, these conversations can be triggering, damaging, and harmful to your mental health. Learning to set boundaries around not just what's on your plate or in your glass, but what's said over those meals can go a huge way towards making mealtimes peaceful, enriching, safe, and healthy. This is from Melissa's book in Chapter 8. We'll be talking about why setting boundaries around consuming food or alcohol can be more challenging, discussing the language of food and why it's so different for each of us, diet culture and its hidden influences on our overall eating, reasons why dietary changes are threatening to others, habits and why habits can be difficult to change, disrupting the status quo, why people come after each other when someone is making a change outside of the status quo, food categories difficult to set a boundary on, how food and eating behaviors are transmitted, emotional and moral attachments to food and the roles they play, and why Melissa says don't justify, excuse, or over-explain when you're setting a boundary around food, as well as breaking the diet culture curse, Melissa's prep tips of course, and her scripts, that no is a complete sentence, and Melissa's hack, the power of right now, and her go-to phrases for shutting it all down. It makes sense why Melissa would write and include this chapter, as she is the co-founder of the Whole30. I very much get it, and I want you to get it too, because the boundary guidance in this chapter is important, not just for those who do the Whole30 or eat gluten-free, keto, or vegan. It's for anyone with food preferences, health goals, medical needs, dietary sensitivities, or personal values around food or alcohol. It's for anyone trying to make peace with their body and weight and ditch the harmful influence of diet culture. It's for anyone who is working to improve their relationship with food, alcohol, and their bodies, who recognizes that boundaries would improve every single one of those dynamics. That's all of us. This is from Melissa in Chapter 8.
Melissa breaks this chapter down into 3 categories. Food. We often find ourselves in situations where we have to communicate our preferences or choices about food. We may want to set boundaries with ourselves or others around food that stirs up cravings, tanks our energy, disrupts our skin, unsettles our digestion, or causes other unwanted symptoms. It is okay to say no simply because you just don't like a certain food. Once you see all the ways you can set healthy boundaries around food, you'll notice how far that simple practice goes to improving your health and self-confidence. Alcohol. Like food, alcohol is something we consume, but it demands its own category, both because of the addictive impact it can have on those who use it and the intense social pressure to participate. Alcohol is the only drug in our culture that we feel we have to justify not using. Table talk. These are situations tangential to food choices. For example, the amount of types of foods we choose to eat, whether or not we diet for weight loss, and how we talk about our bodies and other people's bodies. Table talk is a unique category because of the strong emotional attachments, insecurities, fears, and judgments we hold around bodies and weight.
Melissa shares a story about some women who would gather together and they would order these pancakes and then they would order a dessert pancake at their get-togethers. One of the women decided that she didn't want the dessert pancake and she didn't want to have those pancakes because she was reducing her carbohydrate intake. Everybody jumped all over her when she did that. Melissa says, if your new friends are going skiing and you say, no thanks, I don't ski, it's unlikely they'll peer pressure, ridicule, or judge you for saying no. But when you say, I don't drink or I don't eat gluten, it can elicit a very different response. Eating and drinking alcohol have the potential to make people defensive and reactive the way few other shared activities do. Melissa talks about the language of food, why it's so different for each of us. She attributes this to our families and culture. She says, yes, we all eat, but we all have different ideas about what's healthy, delicious, and appropriate to consume. That means it's hard to have a common language around what we're eating and drinking, from whether a particular food tastes good or bad to whether or not that food is health promoting. Our relationship with eating, drinking, and our bodies evolved from our families and what was modeled for us by our parents. But then she poses this question and she says, but were those relationships modeled in a healthy way? I push it a little further because I actually do feel that it's also cultural, how we define food under those particular things. Is it health promoting? Is it delicious? Do we like eating it? What do we do? The biggest question there is, has it been modeled in a healthy way?
This makes me think about me and my lineage. I'm part Italian, and in my family and others, I've seen patterning. Reoccurring health issues or complications have been attributed to genetics, while overlooking, quite conveniently, lifestyle choices that are passed down culturally. Excess pasta, excess dough, excess wine, excess smoking. A lot of things we become blind to if we're raised in certain cultures might not be perceived as choices that can be changed. And if we exist too much in the middle of those dynamics, it becomes hard to see it in ourselves. Another thing I've seen in Brazil, in my experience, is a very normalized overconsumption of sugar. I've seen people open cans of condensed milk and drink it like a beverage on more than one occasion. It was
Sounds
done
good
in
to
a
me.
I think it's worth trying at least once, but I don't know if I would
Just
make it a
kidding.
regular.
Totally kidding.
I'm not. You could try it once, but I don't think doing it multiple times is good or normal. And I wonder how that can have consequences health-wise too. Maybe diabetes isn't genetic if that's the culture you're participating in. I wonder that sometimes looking back to where that line is.
Melissa goes on and she talks about diet culture. This terminology was new to me. I'm not really familiar with it. She introduces this in such a way where she says, our relationship with food has also been heavily influenced by diet culture, which tells us that certain foods are good or bad, and hints or says outright that we are good or bad based on what's on our plate. Through diet culture, we've come to believe that our worth is tied to the scale, and that the only reason we change our diet, give up a food group, or pass on a treat is to lose weight. As a kid, I certainly witnessed my female relatives squeezing their thighs in dismay and turning, "You look too skinny," into the ultimate compliment, she says. Those influences run deep and can impact not only how we eat today, but the way we behave and communicate with others over a meal. This is where Melissa introduces the hidden relationships around diet culture, food, and how it influences our thinking, but also she's laying the groundwork for setting boundaries and why it's a challenge to set boundaries in these particular categories. We're doing boundaries in a very different way, and we'd like to thank all of our listeners, subscribers, followers, and especially our wonderful Patreon members for your support, sharing this community and this path, quoting us, tagging us, whatever kind acts you do with your friends, family, colleagues, and those who, well, just get it. Your gentle but powerful acts of support, no matter how small, tell us and the world this resonates. So we thank you wholly and fully from our hearts for being the catalyst wherever you are, because it only takes one step forward to begin to step into your magnificence. Melissa says that the reasons why dietary changes are threatening to others is because our relationship with food is deeply personal. It's often conflated with our worth. She says making changes to our diets can feel incredibly threatening to others in social settings, even if we do so without commentary. I like that she shares habits are hard to change, and the more emotionally tied you are to the habit, the longer it takes to break the pattern. I find that to be so interesting, that correlation. She also discusses the marketing of food to create a reliance on consumption, sort of this reward idea. that we're rewarding ourselves with different types of food or different foods. We use it for stress management, comfort, self-love, but that we've been socialized into this through the marketing of foods and particular types of food. If you want to have connection now, you have to have alcohol. If you want to have a good time, you got to be eating something. Wouldn't it be funny if the food and alcohol and prescription drug industries had to create one-to-one ads, kind of like what they did with smoking and cigarettes, showing what overconsumption does by consuming their products or what the side effects actually look like, not just read them, vividly show them. For example, if you have an ad for cookies or alcohol, you have to have an ad for fruits and veggies or whatever. I wonder if that would shift things in such a way, at least create more of an awareness and sort of balance this out. Can't imagine it would ever happen.
That would be awesome. And then they could put side by side what happens when you have too much vegetables versus what happens when you have too much sugar into your body. Compare the excess of both and see if it's fair comparing them as equal. And I guess that there's truth to what they're saying. They dismiss fruit juice completely because of the sugar content, which is important to be mindful of. But also, sugars coming from fruits also have other vitamins and nutrients in them and stuff too. So there is this misunderstanding that the level of processing that goes into food, I think, greatly affects our relationship to it.
It'd be interesting if they had to live by the same principles or rulings as cigarettes and what we would be actually seeing.
Or maybe we'd recognize it around us if we had it somewhere clearly marked. I love the bit there where she ties it into the emotional connection being related to how hard a habit is to break. I do think a lot of choices humans make are emotionally based, but I think some of them become more conscious than others. We can identify and see when somebody's struggling with mental health and using substances, but we reward people who are struggling with mental health and can channel it into work or productivity or over-exercising or over-correcting through some other obsessive avenue. Some of them aren't perceived as coping mechanisms because they fit into the cultural machine differently. It could be interesting to see how those things will start to shatter if we do have examples of long-term investment in certain products or relationships with certain foods.
Middle path.
Middle path. Melissa then describes disrupting the status quo. You can make people feel bad about what they're doing just by doing what you're doing. Simply turning down a treat or drink or asking for water instead of a glass of wine can feel like a judgment to our social partners, who often experience our choices as if we're holding up an unflattering mirror to their behaviors. No pancake, thanks, thus reflects on her friend's choice to eat the pancake, whether she meant it or not, which can bring up feelings of guilt, shame, envy, defensiveness, and anger.
You gotta love those emotions. They're definitely your compass.
Yeah.
Any of those emotions, any of those feelings is a chance for self-reflection, to step back and go, wow, what's going on here with me?
Right.
Melissa goes on to say, explaining their side of it, they think if they can get you to back down on your boundary, they'll feel better about their own choice, and it usually works. She talks about how there's a lot of fear and anxiety at the basis of it. If indulging together is woven into that culture of the friend group, it can feel disruptive and scary when someone changes that dynamic. Your friends may worry that you're outgrowing them or that their choices reflect poorly on them. That movie on Amazon Prime called Brittany Runs a Marathon, her best friend in that movie is the ultimate example of this. As Brittany begins to get healthier because she's overweight, a doctor tells her she needs to get healthier and lose weight for her health. Watching what her friend does, even the things she says to her, which are shocking, but still make so much sense, and I think are a good example of illustrating this even further. Melissa talks about this idea of what may be running through the people's minds, which is, what if you make new, fit, beautiful friends that would rather do goat yoga and drink kale smoothies with them on Sundays? Your friends may fear that the bond that connected you may disappear altogether if pancakes, or whatever it is, are no longer something you share.
I think that that's an interesting point to reflect on. This capacity, I think all of us have, to unconsciously focus on creating a world around us that fits our narrative of self, and the reactions we have when they start changing outside of our current narrative of self. There comes this reflex to try to influence it, to keep it in line so we don't have to self-reflect. I know I've done this. I also know that I would not choose to do it at moments when I was aware of it happening, but I usually catch it after the fact. And I can tell by my reactions and, like Michae said, those feelings. Guilt, shame, envy, defensiveness, and anger are almost like lights and bells going off in my nervous system, letting me know that that's what I'm doing. Otherwise, I would be able to, in a calmer state, reflect and understand why I'm triggered or why I'm in a state of reaction instead of responding, and allow life to be what it is around me, and then learn how to engage with it more authentically instead of a controlling demeanor, which I think is easy for us to get caught up in if we have been wounded, which I know we all have, and still carry some of that pain. I think it becomes an unconscious reflex.
Very true. That's why it's so challenging. It may be more difficult to step back in that moment and examine those feelings. But once you're done with that moment, reflecting on it, I think, is where you bring back your power.
Yes, it's not about the pancake.
Yes.
Because it could be both people can be the person choosing to say no can be making the no for certain reasons or choosing that no. And the person who is reacting and feeling envious or whatever, angry, is having those reactions because of some other reason, an insecurity that's outside of that situation that has nothing to do with the other person's choice. Maybe I'm being insensitive, but I do
No,
believe
you're not.
that.
I do really love that so much. It's
I do.
not about the pancake. I need a
It's not
t-shirt.
about. It's not about the pancake. It's not to be insensitive to people who are reacting and that this is something that's currently on their plate, no pun intended. But I do think that self-reflection will create a lot more space. The boundaries are great for creating space to do the reflecting in.
Yes. And no judgment, because as always, we have been on every side of this.
Yes.
Now, I'm thrilled to announce that we're offering exclusive content on our Patreon, The Golden Seams. We want to take a moment to further explain what we are doing to support and benefit you on your path. Our Golden Alchemist level members all receive a specially crafted 15 to 20 minute deep meditation focused on creating and maintaining clear, kind boundaries, our theme right now. This meditation, when practiced daily for 21 to 30 days, can help you naturally integrate healthy boundaries in your relationships with yourself and energetically, fully helping you incorporate positive boundaries into your life, paving the way for authentic living and personal growth.
This membership level also includes a powerful 1-hour boundary subliminal audio, which serves as the backdrop for the deep meditation. These audios are designed to help release difficulties in creating clear, kind boundaries, while simultaneously assisting you in establishing and maintaining them. They incorporate solfeggio frequencies and binaural beats for maximum effectiveness. Michae, guided by her higher senses, creates these transformative tools, previously reserved for her private clients. To amplify your boundary setting journey, we're including a custom designed mandala by a talented artist from India, who we find to be intuitively guided, synchronized with our themes. This visual tool, when infused with your own energy and displayed in your workspace or on your vision or mood board, can help manifest clear, kind boundaries in your life. The mandala serves as a powerful manifestation tool, helping you bring your desires and intentions into reality. Both the audios and the mandala are infused with Reiki energy by Michae, a Reiki master, to support you even further.
You can enjoy a sample of our work by listening to our discussion of The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie Mackesy, along with our free gift of a 33-minute subliminal audio on harmony, all available on the Golden Seams Patreon linked below. Thank you.
Melissa then describes food categories that are difficult to set boundaries on. Sugary stuff like candy, soda, or chocolate. Carby baked goods like bread, pancakes, bagels, muffins, cake, or donuts. Salty, fatty, shared indulgences like nachos, french fries, or onion rings. Culturally significant dishes like pasta, babka, or enchiladas. And alcohol.
Have you ever tried to turn down a piece of birthday cake?
Once and never again.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of pressure around saying no to birthday cake in certain situations.
Yeah, people get really hurt feelings for some reason.
It's challenging because of the marketing and societal norms of glorifying a lot of these foods too.
Right.
Melissa says that the societally encouraged guilty pleasures present the biggest boundary dilemmas, in part because of the way our modern world glorifies these foods and drinks. She says no one gets up in arms if you pass on the green beans or herbal tea. I disagree with this politely, only in the sense that that Brussels sprout story I did share was actually something that happened to me. I have been harassed over Brussels sprouts at one point. She also says that it's synonymous with bonding with others, relieving stress and anxiety in this sort of treat yourself culture, which she cites from Parks and Recreation. She also talks about how there's this attitude of we deserve it. It feels like saying no is an act of deprivation or punishment, she says. I found this piece very interesting where she cites the money that's spent on marketing and advertising in the food industry. She says in 2017, food, beverage, and restaurant companies spent $13.4 billion on advertising in the United States, and more than 80% of this advertising promoted fast food, sugary drinks, candy, and unhealthy snacks. Alcohol spends between $1 and $2 billion a year, all by itself. That was a lot of money to me.
It's a lot of money.
You think of yourself standing, it's each of us individually. We have to make the food choices for ourselves. We decide what we spend our money on, but we also decide what goes in our mouths and what we eat. You're pushing back against 13.4 billion or 1 to 2 billion dollars as an individual. Just think about that though.
And then the ways they use that budget. I don't know if you've seen how product placement exists in TV shows and movies, where they won't even acknowledge it as a product, but they'll just keep subliminally blasting it everywhere you look, in advertisements, in the background, product placement spliced together.
All I did was read those numbers, and again, my background in business, that's extraordinary. That's a vast amount of money to have to mentally put a boundary on with yourself. The boundary subliminal and the boundary meditation, I can see why immediate relief is felt when you start listening to it, when you see something like that, because you're thinking, why does that make me feel better? I felt much better. I thought maybe it was because I don't have boundaries in the right places and therefore is being shown this. I don't think that it's that alone. I think that it's these subtle triggers that are being that we have to set boundaries on that we're not even aware of. Like you're saying, product placement in movies, we're there for the story.
Exactly. And it's being branded into our psyches. Even neurolinguistic programming being studied in the way that they speak during advertisements or TV shows about products or ideas or ideologies, cultural norms, and beyond what we're seeing at face value too. The normalizing of unhealthy habits might even be an investment.
She says, there's a common understanding that if there's a reason we're indulging, like a birthday, work meeting, or the end of the week, and we're all eating them, the negative effects cancel out. Those are her words. She says, it certainly makes us feel better about taking the donut if everybody else in the break room has one too, or accepting a third glass of wine if everyone else agrees to order another bottle. I like to attribute this to groupthink. I don't feel pressure as much as I feel when I'm in those situations. Oh, why not? Everybody else is doing it.
It does. It feels like a pool party and you're going to be left out. Everybody else is swimming in the pool and having fun. And you're like, all right, a little won't hurt.
Yeah, I just always think everybody else is having a donut. They look tasty.
And if I don't choose one now, there won't even be one to choose maybe.
I know, they'll be the ones I don't want.
Yeah.
She has a really good point with that. She also goes on to discuss how food and eating behaviors are transmitted, and that's exactly the word that she uses, is transmitted. She says, researchers in nutrition and dietetics say that eating behaviors are transmitted socially, and people's food choices are deeply linked to their identity. Even social media plays a role in influencing your choices. People who believe their social circles approve of eating junk food consume significantly more of it themselves. At our core, we all just want to belong, and everyone agreeing to eat is one way to reinforce that belonging in a social group. I thought that this was very interesting in the sense of how much we want to connect.
I think belonging is at the root of everything, even getting involved in bad situations at times. In other ways, too, not just with our diets, right? Get involved with the wrong crowd or start believing other people's desires and dreams are our own and conflating these things. I think it's a slippery slope if we're not sure who we are and we're waiting for the world to tell us.
Yes.
I think it'll be easy to be influenced from that state. And it's not an easy state to get out of, and I know it's a common one to be in as we discover who we are. But I do think a solid sense of self and what works and doesn't work for you is an essential part of being a part of a social circle. And Melissa outlines really well in this book that whole process of determining green, yellow, red boundaries for me was almost like a mental exercise in creating an approximation of what kind of space I need and why in a way that I had never done before. That only solidified my sense of self. And we're not even done with the book.
Melissa shares with us about emotional and moral attachments to food and the roles they play, how they can be termed good or bad.
Hey listeners, enjoyed what you heard? It's just the beginning. For our full-length discussion, subscribe to our Patreon, The Golden Seams. You'll get exclusive access to extended conversations, bonus content, and more. Don't miss out. Join our community and dive deeper into the topics you love. Support us on Patreon and unlock the complete podcast experience. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep shining your authentic light. This is Gabe and Michae, signing off from the Golden Seams. May your path be golden, and may you find the strength to mend and beautify the broken parts of your life, just like the art of Kintsugi. Take care, and we'll see you in our next episode.